Hey folks, welcome back. Hope you're doing well out there. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about what I think is a really important topic. I'm going to do my best here, even though I'm a bit sore and sleepy and tired still, to try to communicate it. And that is shifting and reframing your understanding of most mental health issues, most mental health struggles from a psychopathology frame to a more nervous system centric frame, in particular, understanding the role of dysregulation in the symptoms and the issues and the challenges and the problems that we have. So, if you're someone who's trying to understand how to heal yourself, I think this is going to be a really important key concept for you. So, please join me and let's talk about it. Okay, welcome, guys. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. I just want to say this is a topic that's actually very deep and deserves a really more super detailed exploration and unpacking. But I want to just start to get this idea into the conversation, into your mind as a frame through which to understand whatever issue you're dealing with or wanting to work out or understanding other people and their issues or what, for whatever reason you may be watching this channel. This is going to be a key piece. Dysregulation is an absolutely, I think, essential frame to understand how to heal yourself. This is one of these things, another one of these terms that I heard, like a lot of the somatic therapy, buzzwords and concepts that at first I heard and I kind of understood, but I didn't really absorb and kind of was a little dismissive about. But the more I come back around to this and the more I study somatic therapy and study different approaches to helping people heal, the more clearly, and this becomes like a revealed thing. So with this video, like I said, I'm a bit tired. I'm a bit groggy still waking up today, doing my best to shake it off. So I'm going to try to unpack this. I want it to be kind of a shorter video, a little more off the cuff. I do have some bullet points to unpack here with you, but we'll probably be touching upon this topic over and over and over here on the channel because it's so key and it's so essential. You'll probably see, just side note, as we start to move forward here on the channel, there's a whole set of frames that I've started to articulate and unpack that I'm going to be sharing with you guys as keys to understanding here that I'll probably be kind of circling back around to over and over and over because they're so fundamental and relevant. And while I'll be giving new information and novel takes kind of all along the way, I'm sure, because it's just kind of my nature as I'm always growing and learning, you're going to start to see a set of ideas arrive here on the channel to help you really unpack and clarify how this work is done in terms of healing in general and working through your issues, personal growth, and where your blocks to personal growth might be. Also, how this work is done in terms of psychedelic work, psychedelic therapy, psychedelic guide work. The more I talk with other peers of mine, the more I, explore this whole territory, the more everything I'm about to share with you starts to become more clear. So just a heads up, as we move forward with this channel, you're going to start to get more of these pieces and you'll start to piece together a picture here with me of understanding. I'm super excited to share that with you. So this first idea of dysregulation is a really integral core concept to this whole understanding I'm going to be sharing with you. So let's dive in. So the major idea here that I want to communicate to you today is the idea of reframing your understanding, let's say, of most mental health issues. There are going to be some extreme cases where this may not apply so much. I'm kind of agnostic about this, but this seems to be how it goes. Reframing most of your mental health understandings out of a psychopathology frame or psychopathology lens or kind of model of understanding and into a more nervous system centric model of understanding where we look at how the nervous system works, how human beings are wired, what we're designed for, what are our adaptive strategies to survive in nature, and how does that show up in our lives as different forms of modern issues like depression or anxiety or phobias or all the litany of modern struggles that we have as people, right? And so I want to encourage you to, if you've studied a lot of psychology or a lot of therapy, or you've done a lot of therapy, you've probably kind of passively or explicitly consumed a lot of these set of ideas that imply kind of a model of pathology, right? A model of illness and sickness as a kind of an analog or metaphor that parallels physical illness, right? So just to kind of name it here, as far as I understand, and I I'm sure there's books on this, and I haven't like gone deep into this. So, if there's someone watching who can add more context to this or correct me if I'm off point here, feel free. But from what I understand, the therapy world, the psychotherapy world, largely started without any sort of medical underpinnings, really as a theoretical field, right? And it's still largely based in theory. There's a lot of kind of anecdotal information and different approaches and different theories that have informed what modern therapy is. But along the way, as therapy started to develop and as the medical establishment started to develop in the 20th century, there was kind of this appeal to authority that started to happen in the therapy world where they kind of the thought, and you'll still hear like psychiatrists say this or certain psychologists say this, the thought is that essentially we can think of the mind like the body, right? And that the mental emotional system, has the same kind of mechanistic quality that the body has. And if we just understand what the illnesses are, the pathologies are of the body, then we can just fix them the way we might say a car. And I think there's really good reason to question even this model of medicine in terms of the physical body. Allopathic medicine and this framing of mechanisms and mechanistic understanding of health and healing is in one sense very powerful and very useful and has given us great advances in medicine, but simultaneously has some real drawbacks and some real flaws, most noticeably a lack of systems thinking, a lack of awareness of the complexity and the interdependence of different parts of the systems of the body. I do think allopathic medicine is getting better about this, but it's a major kind of shortcoming or blind spot of allopathic medicine. And the same thing applies over in the therapy world, right? So there, like as I've been saying, there is this appeal to authority that kind of got built into understanding psychology, and this idea that it's the same thing, that if you can understand the very particular mechanisms of the psyche and of the mind, that this will somehow solve problems, fix issues, and of course we see a parallel track of thought there with psychopharmacology and psychiatry. And if we can only activate this particular brain region or this particular neural circuit, or we can give you just this one specific molecule, then it'll fix your brain chemistry and balance, and you'll be suddenly healthy and whole as a human being, right? And I think this model of focus, the other thing I want to say about this is, it is a psychopathology model, right? So baked into that worldview is the emphasis and the looking at issues, at pathologies, at disease, at what's broken, right? Now, again, there's utility in that. I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. But what's being kind of left off the table from that point of view, from that lens, is understanding the whole system of the nervous system, understanding how the nervous system works, and perhaps looking at issues, mental health or personal well-being issues, more through the lens of wholeness, whole systems, looking at through the lens of, are these adaptive behaviors? Are these, perhaps evolutionarily useful or consistent or, actually healthy in some context, right? Are some of the things that we see that are mental health related issues understood from a different lens, right? And if we look at them from a different lens, what does that reveal? And this is what studying somatic therapy and kind of approaching it from that angle started to really open up for me. And this is what I'm hoping to communicate here to you, which is this idea of, instead of thinking of terms of depression as an illness or anxiety as an illness or, trauma as an illness or, blah, 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 don't think of these as my brain is broken, I'm sick, I have an illness, there's a problem here, right? That's a very kind of narrow, mechanistic pathology way of framing it. I would suggest that for most mental health related issues, it's easier and more useful and better, quite frankly, to start from a lens of understanding the nervous system and the experiences you've been through, and understanding the role of stress on the nervous system, what the nervous system does with stressful experiences, and understanding that when stress becomes stored in the body as memory, let's say, that this creates patterns of dysregulation. In particular, what I mean in this case is emotional dysregulation, but emotional dysregulation can often lead to very physical symptoms, and that can be more like nervous system dysregulation proper, right? But the idea is that a lot of what we're dealing with fundamentally is a sense of dysregulation at an emotional level or at a nervous system level uh, that is stored in our body. And this is a huge part of what creates the issue that we're grappling with, whether this is, we get triggered anytime someone touches us, and therefore it's hard for us to date romantically, or we have some sort of distorted lens of relationship that needs healing, or we have trauma that needs to be processed and let go of, or we have a chronic low-grade depression and we don't know why. I think the first place to start, the most reasonable place to start, is understanding what is the stress that's held in your nervous system from things you've been through in the past that might need resolving, right? So I think another way that we could define dysregulation here that might be more useful to you or more easy to understand, alongside the idea of stress held in the body, you can think of it as some form or flavor of not feeling safe, right? So from a dysregulation lens, if the nervous system goes through a period of not feeling safe for whatever reason, right, then that can get stored and learned by the body's kind of unconscious, capacity to learn, and held in the body as tension, fear, anxiety, stress, right? You'll notice if you think about the term PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder, right? It is a disorder of held stress in the body that creates the PTSD effect, right? And so we want to understand first and foremost how the body works with stress, what the body does with stress, and that stress often translates into an ongoing, sometimes chronic or sometimes just periodic feeling of not feeling safe in our environment, perhaps in our own skin, et cetera, et cetera. So what's useful about this is from this lens, then our first kind of avenue of approach is building safety, right, with the body, in our environment, with the nervous system, and helping the nervous system to offload the stress that may be driving whatever symptom it is, whether it's anxiety again, or depression, or some phobia, or some irrational, rumination you have, or whatever it is. I'll be explaining more how this all works, but consider that whatever symptoms or issues you're struggling with, they're driven by a deep holding of stress in the nervous system, and that if we could offload that stress, if we could, discharge the stress, release the stress, let go of it, balance it out, regulate it, that from that place of feeling safe in your own skin, feeling safe in your own nervous system, feeling safe in general, from that place, it then becomes so much easier to address any patterns of issues that are going on, A, but B, oftentimes the resolving of the stress around whatever it is all the work, is the thing, is the healing, is the transformation, right? And so I really prefer this frame of working with dysregulation, learning how to regulate, self-regulate, co-regulate, learning how to regulate our nervous system as a life skill, as a crucial core learning for owning a nervous system, shall we say, and putting that first and foremost. Because if you think about it, okay, let's imagine, you're struggling with depression, for example, super common, a lot of us are. And let's say that depression, sure, could it be medical? It could be driven by, a gut flora imbalance, for example, or chronic inflammation in the body from a poor lifestyle and poor diet. Totally could be a physical thing, right? Could perhaps that also be reflected in the neurochemistry? Sure. So we could think of it from a neurochemistry lens, which is kind of what, psychiatry does. But another way of looking at depression is, was there something that happened along the way, maybe a set of experiences or maybe one deep experience that really was stressful or painful or so hard that it kind of caused your nervous system to kind of turn down the volume on life altogether. And then you're just kind of feeling disconnected, feeling flat, feeling, low vitality, low affect, all the things that they would describe from a therapy lens, right? So what if that stress is still there, held in the body, driving your body's response to want to turn down the volume and kind of shut things down and numb things out in order to be able to cope with it, right? Or what if that stress, there was some sort of unresolvable thing there, and so we're kind of like stuck with some question or some issue or some feeling that was unresolvable, and that's still being held in the body, and then we're kind of trying to carry on, but it's kind of pulling a lot of energy, or it takes a lot of energy to kind of ignore it, right? That would kind of make sense for depression, just as a rough example here. And so I want you to start to consider this, right? And I think this becomes when we add a psychedelic into the mix, when we add an altered state of consciousness into the mix, even quite frankly, if you add a solid meditation practice to the mix, I think this starts to become more and more self-evident, right? The moment we unplug our attention from the world outside of us and kind of turn within and slow down and listen and pay attention to our nervous system, generally what's the first thing that starts to happen if we haven't been processing this stress? We get ruminations, we get thought loops, we get rising fears, we get worries, we get emotions that have been sitting in us for a long time starting to bubble up to the surface, right? So the moment we stop distracting ourselves with the world around us and go inside, it becomes self-evident really quickly that there's a lot there that needs processing, right? And what you find over and over and over, and this is what I've been finding with my clients, the more we kind of address the dysregulation first and foremost, rather than trying to figure out why do I have this issue, trying to get to the bottom of it, trying to understand it, trying to change it or control it or judge it or outcast it or all the things, right? If we first just work at regulating and creating safety and discharging the stress there, a lot of times, a lot of my clients have a huge transformative experience in the most gentle way, and they feel like life is totally different. They feel safe in their own skin, often for the first time. The other thing we find a lot is if there is something to address there, it becomes so much easier to address. But a lot of times just addressing the stress around the thing kind of completes the thing and puts it really in the past where often this stuff belongs. So I just want to kind of speak to that. Just look at my notes really quick here to see if there's anything else I wanted to share before we wrap the video. Yeah, the last thing I'll say, last point here. So I hope this is making sense so far. So instead of, again, why do I have this issue? What's the thing I need to remember that I can't remember? What's my problem here, et cetera, et cetera. If we pivot to just tuning in and working with the nervous system and helping to offload the stress, that I think is the first port of call. This is the thing that I think most of us lack as a life skill. This is often the thing we were not given in our families of origin or our upbringings. And I think from my point of view, it doesn't make sense to apply a psychopathology lens to somebody, and really get diagnostic and into medications and into intense interventions and all this stuff without handling the stress first, right? Like if we haven't done the cleanup work of offloading the stress and taking care of the past and, helping the person feel safe in their own skin first, then how can we reasonably say with confidence that it is a psychopathology, that it is truly illness or truly something broken in the brain or something like that? I don't think we can reasonably make that claim if, it's very logical. When people are stressed, they behave in dysfunctional ways. Like this is well known, whether we're looking at coping mechanisms or whether we're looking at the effects of stress on cognition or the effects of stress on the way people show up in relationships. There's tons of data, and just look at your own life. It's pretty self-evident and obvious that when we are stressed, we function worse, right? We have less willpower. All our healthy habits tend to go out the window. We all know this, right? So it makes perfect sense to me that before we're looking at medications, before we're looking at my brain is broken and this is something that needs fixing in that kind of sense, in the pathology mechanistic kind of approach, we've really got to clean up the stress first, right? We've got to regulate. We've got to understand dysregulation and what it means to regulate ourselves. And the thing I like about this, and perhaps the thing that psychiatrists hate about this is that generally that doesn't cost anything, that's a gentle intervention to make more safety, that's generally something that's healthy and free or easy to learn. And once you get it, it's a life skill that you have for the rest of your life, which makes you less dependent on consuming strange pills and chemicals in order to feel okay or normal or right or healthy or optimal or all these things. So yeah, that's kind of my message to you today. I guess the one other thing I would tag on the end of this, and then we'll wrap the video, is this also applies very much, not just in the kind of healing mental health space, but this also applies very much in the personal growth space, in the self-optimization space. If we are wanting to be at our best, if we're wanting to be firing on all cylinders and, really rocking life, we want to be minimizing stress because it creates drag. It creates, again, dysfunction, lower function. It pulls us off our game. And when we have a lot of stress accrued in the nervous system that we haven't addressed, it becomes really, really hard to self-actualize, to grow, to optimize, to be your best. What I find over and over and over is that the people who aren't kind of functioning at the level they'd like to be functioning, if we really start to unpack, why are you, what's holding you back here? It's a very common coaching question. So what's stopping you from taking this action, from doing X, Y, Z, right? If you start to unpack that, what you're going to hear is some form of stress and stress response, whether that's I freeze, whether that's it's just overwhelming and too hard, whether that's I keep trying, but I just fall apart. And there's kind of like almost a self-sabotage thing going on. These kinds of coaching issues that you see, these patterns, are all driven fundamentally by stress, right? So this applies in the kind of more positive, expansive personal growth side of the equation too, as well as the kind of remedial personal healing, sorting out the past side of things. So that's my point for now. Again, we'll be talking about this a lot more, but what do you think? Does this resonate with you? Do you disagree? Do you agree? Do you understand what I mean when I say dysregulation and self-regulation? Is all this making sense to you? Let me know. Leave a comment down below. And I hope you're doing well. And thank you for watching. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.